All right, Chris, we are going to talk about Dynamite and kind of keep an eye on Collision as part 2 of Fyter Fest is taking place. I have not done live watches before. It's not my style of podcasting, but I do have a big computer screen and Collision on the right side of my screen, and you are on the left side of my screen. And we'll talk about what we saw so far and kind of keep half an eye on what's going on Collision too. But you and I were commenting right before we went live that this episode of Dynamite just flew by. Yeah, and I'm not even sure why. Maybe it's because I knew it was 4 hours and I had some technical issues both with my DirecTV app on my Roku, so I just switched to my computer screen, and then at some point I lost the ability to pause it and rewind. So sometimes when you're stressed out, you get a little extra. Things can go by a little faster too. But tell me what you thought of, and we're going to talk about it a little differently, but the first 2 hours of Dynamite, or the first 2 hours of Fyter Fest, the Dynamite portion felt different because it wasn't just a self-contained show. They were doing what Jason Powell and I talked yesterday we hope they do, which is run angles during the first 2 hours to get people to watch the next 2 hours, and they certainly did that too. Tell me what you thought about how they kind of serve two masters. Stay tuned, there's stuff coming up, but we want to entertain you with some good stuff in the meantime.
It's almost comical because I'd actually like them to do more of what they did tonight. I made one of the first notes I wrote down was how much I enjoyed for the first few minutes. You had Toni Storm sort of opening the show in an offset box, doing a quick hit before her match. They did a really nice promo with Mark Briscoe right before he came out for his match. And it really just set up everything we were expecting to see. And then you had like the in-ring segment with Osprey setting up something for 2 hours later. It almost felt like they had finally listened to what everybody's been saying, where you don't need to go match. You actually really want to slow things down and give people a reason to watch again. And, if they keep doing it like this, but push it to, hey, watch us on Saturday instead of, hey, stay tuned after another 2 hours, I think it's actually going to make a lot more sense and make people actually want to keep watching.
Well, I think they gave enough hype to the second 2 hours is not at the level of the first two, and it shouldn't be. I mean, they're going to have a smaller audience, but I think they needed some star power. And Will Osprey being advertised for a match, yes, it's just Leo Rush. He's coming to the ring now as we're recording this. When I say just Leo Rush, I mean somebody who's not pushed. It's not like a pay-per-view caliber match, but we got Leo Rush being obnoxious along with Action Andretti and Will Osprey accepting a challenge. So we saw the kind of organic formation of the match, and I'm invested in it. I want to see Osprey knock Leo Rush down. He's got anger built up, and Osprey's like, I'll take care of that for you. Let's go in the ring, sunshine, as he said. And so I think Will Osprey's a draw. He's a reason that people would stay tuned, and they ought to. But they had a third master they were serving tonight, which is promoting next week's 4 hour block of Dynamite and Collision. What is it? Summer Smash, Summer Spring
Some of
time,
us are not going to be
Summer
watching.
something. Summer Bash, Summer Blast. Yeah, I should know. Someone tell us. So they were trying to promote that too, and I think they did a decent job with that too, and we'll get into the specifics of it. But to what you said, yeah, I'd like to see more Summer Blockbuster. Thank you, Zach Barber. I thought it had to be in it, but Blast and whatever didn't sound right. So I thought that the promoting of Collision, if they did that every week, but it wasn't for right afterwards, but for Saturday, would help people think Collision is important. Again, Collision doesn't have to have as strong of a lineup as Dynamite, but it ought to be more than just a show with a bunch of matches that aren't consequential, or matches that weren't set up except on Collision the previous week. So when you expose the Dynamite audience to it, it could help. So maybe they'll take this and learn from it, and we'll find out from the viewership numbers if TBS and AEW learn maybe they shouldn't do 4 hours on a weekday when people have to get up for work the next day. They
shouldn't, plain and simple. Even if the people in the building did get to watch a very exciting...
Oh, go ahead. Chris, you locked up. Just I don't know if it was me not hearing you or I have too much going on my Wi-Fi, but tell me what you said again in response to what I brought up.
I was saying they shouldn't do 4 hours every week. They shouldn't do 4 hours pretty much ever. The pay-per-views at 4 hours is pushing it. But they've done what they can here. Like, the people in the building got to watch a very exciting Fatal 4-Way with Kenny Omega in it. immediately followed by Okada coming out, which, yes, it's for the sickos, and most people don't think that Okada is anything special because they've never watched New Japan. Spoilers, you probably should be. And go straight
I know
into
how someone can get oriented to New Japan. There's a guide on the sidebar.
Almost if you're a beginner to New Japan, there might be a guide you could read.
Let me plug it. Let me interrupt your thought and flow. On PWTorch.com, on the sidebar of the article pages, there is a link to the 4-part series that Chris Lansdell, the co-host here, who we'll introduce in a moment, wrote. It is a wonderful primer. Whether if you are not into New Japan or you're sort of into it or you're really into it, it's worth reading. It's also something to point your friends to if you want them to get into it. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Lio Rush is an exciting talent. He's not ever going to be a top card guy, but he makes you want to watch because he does things that most people shouldn't be able to do. And you put him in there with Osprey, who used to be able to do the things that Lio does, and now does some of them, but is also a really good base. It's going to be a thrilling and exciting match, even if there's really a thin justification for having it. So they're making people stay. And if they can follow that up with something that makes people want to stick around, maybe that third hour in this case holds on to a decent number, and then the 4th hour is really just bonus material anyway.
Yeah. I don't know how many people are staying tuned to see Teklet's debut, or Sammy Guevara try to take the ROH TV title from Nick Wayne in a 4-way. Some of it is just going to be, we're going to get to the time filler portion of things. They said Hangman is speaking during Collision in a graphic on the corner of the screen. Maybe they ought to have plugged that a little bit more during Dynamite. Did they mention it?
I don't even know if they mentioned he was there. Yeah. Swerve isn't. Swerve is apparently in Italy at somebody's wedding. But I don't remember them mentioning Hangman being in the building.
One thing I like that they did with Swerve is they had original content that had not been on Dynamite yet that took place after last week's Dynamite. So that we actually got original content from Swerve without him being at the show. And I think you don't want to overdo that and make it like you're trying to con people into thinking, our guys take every other week off, but we're going to throw new content at you. But you should do it every now and then. Find creative ways. The Young Bucks should, if they're not going to fly out for a Dynamite, have them cut a promo backstage and with a generic background. If you know what you're doing the following week where they can talk about it, at least they're appearing on the show for 45 seconds or a minute. You keep them in the mix. I just grabbed the Young Bucks as an example, but it can apply to just about anyone. Zach Barber says, I'm interested in Tekla. Well, of course you are, but I'm not always talking about the guy who writes columns on AEW for PWTorch. I'm talking about the average fan and how invested they are. They might end up invested in her. I'm saying at this point, the average Dynamite viewer is not staying up super late, so they're tired at work tomorrow to watch Tekla live. Let's get into some specifics. We talked about that clip where they opened the show with Tony Schiavone mid-ring introducing Will Osprey. Osprey followed up on what they did last week. In and of itself, I like that. I like that. I tried to make something happen last week. Now I've had a week to think about it. Here are my new thoughts. Something happened. It mattered enough to maybe change the mindset of the person who was trying to bring two people together. He explained himself well. We had the clip that showed him and Swerve getting into it. And he said, hey, I don't like doing this. I've known him since I was 20. But in the end, as much as I love Swerve, I'll take a bullet for AEW even more, which was, very loyal of Osprey to say about the brand. And so he still says, we have to band together to get rid of Moxley. We can then fight each other the next day, but let's get together. And then after that, and that's a quick summary, that's when Andrade and Lio Rush came out setting up the match that we're kind of live watching right now. So tell me what you thought of that. I saw you nodding along to some of my compliments. What did you think of that opening segment? Any downside to it?
It's a function of the fact that they, for some reason, finished both Owen Hart tournaments 7 weeks before the title match, or 8 weeks, actually it was. They have to find some way to keep us interested in those title matches for 8 weeks. And this sort of 3/4-way, we all want to beat Moxley interaction, which is now apparently going to include MJF as well, is one way to keep us interested without having to have, Hangman and Mox in the ring together, but still trying to keep them apart. I do think Osprey's role in this is interesting. He's pretty well suited to it as the sort of friendly, everybody loves me guy. He doesn't have the unforgivable things baggage that Swerve and Hangman both have. But I think sometimes he just comes across a little too energetic for the role he's trying to play. He doesn't really have a calm, quiet peacemaker voice. He only has the incredibly amped up voice. So you never really get the feeling that he's suited in terms of his tone to the role he's playing. But I think what he's saying and how he's saying it, the points he's making are resonating well. And I think it's interesting to see where this is going to go. I assume it's going to end up with all three of them teaming up. That would seem to be the logical way to go in order to give Hangman like a reasonable shot at the pay-per-view. But I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there, and I'm hoping they don't drag this out for too long.
One point that Lady B brought up about this is I wish they had this show as one event on Max. I was among the many who missed the Okada moment switching on the app between shows.
Yeah.
And because not everybody has. Well, I'm trying to think. How did this for Canada? How did it work?
I'm surprised I'm even able to still see it. I have it on now, and let me just check. It is 2 events on TSN here. We don't normally get Collision at all. So.
Yeah. So, well, I'm glad there's an exception to that.
Yeah,
but
it's strange.
Yeah, I mean the steps away a little bit from the Osprey thing. I'll get back to that, but from a overall presentation standpoint, I think it's brand confusion. Welcome to Fyter Fest. What is Fyter Fest? Is it the logo doesn't say Dynamite, the ring doesn't say Dynamite. I think the announce desk said Dynamite, the channel guide said Dynamite, and then they switched to Collision, and Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness took over the announcing, and it says Collision on the announce desk. So I think it's confusing branding. In the end, I'm not sure there's a better solution than what they did in the sense that Fyter Fest makes it feel like it's a cohesive 4 hours and it's a special event rather than I always watch Dynamite, I always skip Collision, so when Dynamite's over, I'm going to not watch anymore, which might have been what happened if they just said Collision is coming up next. Certainly that was the case when they would do that with Rampage. It's like, I know what Rampage is as a brand. The downside is, and I don't blame them for this, but there's a consequence to it. They did not put on a pay-per-view lineup, no matter what, Tony Khan or anyone said on online and social media. They don't have that big hook to really keep people tuned in. So they're kind of just stringing people along one segment at a time. Hey, this was a good match with Osprey and Leo. Now next is this and next is this, as opposed to just bribing people to stay tuned for a big main event at the end. And again, that's probably the right thing to do, but the downside is I don't know how well they're going to hold the audience.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why they split it. If you have it as 2 shows, the Collision rating will not hurt the Dynamite rating. If you have all 4 hours together, it ends up as a composite for all 4 hours, which is going to drag it down.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that Osprey just needed a distraction with Leo Rush trying to use brass knuckles to beat Leo Rush, and that it took him that long, as an aside. That's part of the reasoning behind that. And I don't know why they needed this match to go as long as it did. Osprey should have put him away in a couple of minutes, and then they could have done the after-match stuff if that's what they wanted to do.
You're like 20 seconds ahead of me, so you're going to be spoiling things for me all night, Chris.
Oh, dear.
No, it's fine. It's trust me, it's not important. It's just kind of fun. I'm like, oh, okay, that's happening now. What he just talked about. Okay, let's pause. I'm going to get back to the Osprey interview. We need to briefly introduce ourselves, and then we're going to bring someone on who is in the arena right now to talk to us about the event, which is going to be exciting. We'll reveal that in a minute. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. I am Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. And I am live on the PWTorch YouTube channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after Raw, Dynamite, and Smackdown. And tonight is our Dynamite show. And my co-host, as we live watch the Collision portion of Fyter Fest tonight, is Chris Lansdell, a PWTorch contributor. Chris, welcome. We got a teaser for something you want to talk about later, MJF, in the caption on your screen. But yeah, welcome to the co-host here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always good to be here. I love doing these shows, and always good to chat with you and to chat with the viewers. And an interesting experience trying to keep an eye on what's happening in the ring at the same time.
Yeah, it's an adventure. I'm going to keep our intro shorter because I want to get right to Chris Griffin, our correspondent here. But you can participate if you're watching us live in the chat. Our email address is wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd prefer to participate that way, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're a VIP member, the link to join us live as a caller is in the PWTorch VIP report on Dynamite. We also will have Joshua White picking up the Collision coverage, and that'll be the written report on Collision that he does every weekend. He's doing it tonight instead, of course, and we'll have that on our website, PWTorch. Let's get to Chris, because I know he wants to get back to the action. Chris, welcome. Good to talk to you.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah. So you're going to be able to get back in the building?
Yeah, I'm hanging out here with the other smokers.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks for joining us. I love the venue, by the way, on television. It looks great.
My God. Yes.
Talk about it. Like, what's it like in that building, energy-wise?
Oh, the venue's awesome. So I've been to a few concerts here, saw the Violent Femmes here, saw Flogging Wally here. Man, great venue. So I've been excited since they announced the show is going to be here. Takes me back to the ECW days of Heyman saying, let's have lots of energy and let's sell the building out. Let's make sure that, that it's a hot ticket. It's not something that you can walk up to the door and get into. And I was trying to show the venue. So, because it was general admission, I was trying to say, here's where we want to sit. And there were no tickets to open up the app to show the venue. So we sold out. It's probably, north of 2,000 people in here, just crammed in what's normally a music venue. So the acoustics are awesome.
Yep.
They're coming out from the stage, and we're hard cameras set up from the stage itself. So when they're talking to hard cam, they're just talking to the stage. But I'm straight behind there, so it's been a blast.
Well, Chris, if you came to see Hangman Page, you should get back in the building because he's cutting a promo right now. If that's going to break your heart, you can cut away and come back to us if you want.
Oh, I'll catch it on.
Okay, that's
I'll
okay.
catch it later.
Just keeping you. I'm just showing off that we know what's happening, and you don't, and you're there.
No, I wanted to see the Leo and Osprey match, and that did not disappoint.
So they're in Denver. Bobby Lashley got Bobby Chance. Tell me about the dynamic with the crowd, with MJF, MVP. And the dynamic there with the wrestlers who they challenged for a match next week, too, who had to impress them. Just kind of get into that.
Yeah. So Bobby Lashley, of course, from Colorado, Colorado Springs, from the training center, that's my stomping grounds. So I'm bitter when he says he's from Denver and he's from Colorado Springs. But
that goes.
Yeah. So we love him for that, but MVP, and he were able to turn the crowd heel and turn heel on the crowd. So we had to turn our backs on him.
And of course, MVP played into it as opposed to trying to, get heel heat. We'll get into that later in the show. Who got the biggest pop of the night? I mean, Kenny got a huge, big time ring entrance, but Osprey, sometimes you get the benefit of being the first one out for the big pop. I know there were some dark matches or ROH matches, I think, taped beforehand. Tony Storm is popular. Yeah. Bobby Lashley, obviously regionally popular. Talk about the biggest reactions of the night so far.
I think the biggest was definitely Lashley and the Hurt Syndicate. Man, they're the heels that are just too damn cool to boo, with the exception of MJF. He's easy to boo, but so that was the biggest pop of the night, and the reaction for the homecoming Bobby Lashley until they went and gave us the thumbs down.
Then who came next?
Kenny. Yeah, definitely the big time.
Yep. Chris, jump in with a question for Chris. That's confusing.
Yeah. I'm
curious. We can go with Griffin. Not
sure,
just
yeah.
because
Thank
he's
you.
trying to be a D-bag, but with the one name, but there's too many Chris's in the world.
I get it.
I think that's the correct number of Chris's, honestly. I'm curious how the 6-man tag went down, because from what we could see, from what I could see anyway, it seemed like it was a bit of a lull. It was an action-packed match, but you had 4 people who'd been defined down and 2 people who were basically new. Did it feel like that sort of sucked some of the energy out?
Which is weird to say when the one with all the high flying was the lull. There was a big pop for Bayley coming out. The crowd loves Bayley and love the big spots. I think it's just we're here for 4.5 hours with the ROH match. So It's just a long night, and you have to take a breath somewhere.
I had to do a double take there where you said Bailey coming out. I'm like, wait,
yeah.
did you get
Speedball.
fired?
Mike Bailey, yes.
I like when I do my reports, I should send this to all the contributors. Like I always try to use the most identifiable term. Like it's not Max, it's Caster, because there's also MJF. I never call MJF Max because that's confusing. Never call Hangman Adam or Page because there's don't call Christian Cage. He should be Christian because there's Brian Cage. You know, it makes Vince McMahon look like maybe he had the right idea all along, making everyone change their names. Yeah.
It's fun in New Japan because there's two Takahashis and one of them is great and one of them sucks. So you have to be really careful.
Yep. Anyway, on to more important things. Chris, talk about if anything stood out before Dynamite went on the air from what you saw.
Just the crowd that was eager. I'll send you a picture with some reports, but the line was long when the doors were ready to open at 4:30. I got here about 2:15 to get up in front, and I'm happy we did. And got great seats for it. But seeing the eager line and then seeing it, the whole venue filled up, I think the most memorable thing is just going to be the venue and the crowd and the atmosphere that it creates.
How about in terms of matches that took place beforehand too?
I was personally a little underwhelmed with the Moxley match. With Briscoe, I think maybe I set my expectations really high because he did what he's supposed to do. Mark Briscoe talked me into the building. He got a great promo to say, you know, my family thinks I'm weak now, and I'm just going to go whip your ass. And so I was ready to see him fired up and do a little bit more ass whipping, but. I hoped it'd be later in the night, and the way this thing's set up, we had bets going if the Mox match would end up at the bar that's on either side of the play.
Yeah. So talk about Mox and Mark Briscoe, because I thought that was a crowd-pleasing, hard-hitting.
It was, and it was probably my high expectations. The crowd was pleased. I guess I just wanted a little bit more, and I knew it wasn't going to be when it was the first match on the show.
Yeah. Did the Max Caster thing, speaking of Maxes, did the Max Caster thing work?
So the Max Caster thing absolutely works. That's in my notes, actually.
Yeah.
But I can't get my notes and my camera at the same time, which is a flaw in my thoughts.
Your plan. That's yeah.
The people were chanting the "Let's go, Max! You're the best wrestler alive" before he started it. So
wow,
there were some coming from the back organically. So I love that. I have a soft spot for Max Caster too. I think he's kind of where Goofy Jericho was once upon a time, where he'd call people out and people come out and whip his ass, and he'd still consider himself the best. And I see a little bit of that there. So I like the guy. I love the acclaim.
Last thing for you, was there any kind of cult pop for Speedball?
The pop was definitely there for Speedball. Yeah. So as I referred to him as Bailey, that's the one that, definitely with his music playing, and there was a big pop when they came out. As much as the match cooled down a little bit with the crowd, the pop was definitely there.
Chris, anything you want to sneak in before we let Griffin go?
No, you touched on the Max Caster thing, which was the only other thing I wanted to mention. It really sounded like he's starting to get somewhere with that. I don't know if you really want to be missing FTR against Templario, so we'll probably let you get back to that.
That's happening. I do want to get back in there.
Yep. Yeah. So bell's about to ring. So thanks,
right,
Griffin.
perfect.
Good talking to you.
Thanks.
You bet. All right, so check out Griffin's top 5 lists on PWTorch.com. Every week or two, we got a top 5 list from him. He's doing a great job with it. Always fun to have on-site correspondents, especially Torch contributors, and maybe he'll be a co-host one of these days too. Okay, Chris, we left off talking about the format of Fyter Fest. As a 4 block. I want to get back to a couple comments on the Osprey promo specifically, and Lady B brought up a really good point. Will saying, "This is why my company sucks" was not a good look. I wonder if he misspoke. Lady B adds, that being said, I'm just glad Will got a haircut. Thank you, his wifey, for making him cut the Jonathan Taylor Thomas hair. And so the comment about Osprey, that this company, well, I'm trying to think of what his exact phrasing was, but I know what Lady B's getting at, which is this company doesn't suck because of us. It sucks because of you, John Moxley, and we're going to bring it back, or something along those lines. And when they go there, I wince a little bit, like Lady B obviously is. Chris, what do you think about that approach? Like, to me, if I'm Tony Khan, I'm like, let's figure out a way to say this in a way that that makes us not look like Moxley has succeeded in bringing this company down, or something like that. I'll look for my my quote in my notes on this.
It's funny because I didn't actually pick up on that. I was too busy cringing over the fact that he was about to wrestle a black man and was talking about having his crime fighting pants upstairs, which he said twice, which really made me go, ooh, maybe not, Will.
In his defense, he's just means Superman pants, long trunks. But yeah, I mean, you can get caught. Yeah.
Yeah. Just think about the way Superman pants would have been much better. I think maybe I misheard it, but I thought he said, if this company sucks, it's because of you, not because of us.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my notes. I mean, this is an ongoing theme with Osprey and this storyline of we're going to make AEW great again. This wasn't as bad of a week. In fact, this might be a product of a conversation, because Osprey said if Moxley doesn't like what AEW has become, he should piss off.
Yeah.
Because he, Swerve, and Hangman, along with Tony Storm and Kenny Omega, are the reason AEW has momentum again. Now, when you say has momentum again, you're saying it had lost its momentum. I don't know if you want to get that meta about things, but the idea, because I don't know how many people watching, the ones who were watching Dynamite didn't think it lost momentum or stuck through it and don't want to be reminded of it. But I think there is the idea that Moxley's whole heel persona is based around, I want to save this company. And now the baby faces are going, you're the one who dragged it down. We're the reason that it has momentum. I mean, I get the spirit of it. It's just walking a dangerous kind of balance between saying, the Minnesota North Stars, when I was a little kid, the NHL team, they had an awful season. And for the next year, they did a commercial advertising tickets to the North Stars NHL games. And they showed last year's team coming onto the ice and stumbling and falling. And they said, last year we sucked. We were awful. We couldn't skate. We didn't try. But we have a renewed motivation. We've got new players. It's going to be an exciting year. Like, they literally were owning how bad they were the year before in this ad. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. It's classic hockey ad to try to sell tickets. The AEW's not going quite that far, but I don't know that they should go too far in that direction. I get what Lady B's saying.
Yeah, you got to be careful, because hey, we don't suck anymore is kind of a comedic way to do it, but I don't even think that's the tack that they want to be taking.
Yeah.
I didn't take what Will said that way, but I understand why somebody would. And again, I think it's just a case of a more careful choice of words. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to say this is a case for scripting promos, because it isn't, mm-hmm. but it's probably a good idea to sort of pause and think a minute before you say what you're about to say.
Yeah. And Lady Beach says, it didn't help that Will said we finally had momentum in the promo. Dougie Doug said, Osprey has been saying it for weeks. And as someone who likes the product, it's weird to hear him keep telling me I was watching uncool trash. And there was a little bit of, I get that, I thought it was good. Why was I a fool for thinking it was good? Zach Barber says, it's a black man. That Osprey comment didn't even faze me. So it's settled.
Yeah, black people are clearly a monolith, and we are a monolith that is shaped like Zach Barber. I don't know what to tell you, Zach.
No,
yeah. It didn't offend me, but it made me cringe, because I know some people are going to find that offensive, and it is the sort of thing that you have to be careful about saying.
Yeah. I agree. I'm glad you don't want it, because Osprey's heart is probably not there. I didn't mean that at all.
No,
so
absolutely.
you don't, but you would hope that people don't hear it. But if you hear it and you're like, be careful. I think that's a fair comment to make. Chris, we haven't talked about it, but I want to get your thoughts on last week's Mega Summit with Osprey, Swerve, and Osprey. Kind of the bigger picture of it. We talked about the follow-up this week, but do you like where they're going with this? We just had a Hangman promo in the ring while we were talking to Griffin, and there was a Then Moxley came in the ring from behind and they got into it. So they're clearly, obviously, rightfully promoting their match coming up. But at the same time, last week I thought they did a really good job going, here's our top baby faces. And they each kind of have a similar agenda, but a different way of going about it. And they have a history that's hard to get through. Did you like that segment last week?
I was intrigued by it. And as I said earlier, I think it's a function of the fact that they had 8 weeks to fill. It's not very often that you have 2 months of build when the title match is already established and you know what it's going to be. And I almost feel like they've got to this intriguing way of going about it because they were forced into it based on the calendar. But in this case, I'm okay with it because it actually looks like it's going to be good. And the only way I can see this going is that the threat of Moxley overcomes the hatred that Swerve and Hangman have for each other, and they do end up helping each other out. So they have this sort of uneasy willingness to coexist, but then they're never going to be friends, which is fine for two baby faces. I think there's some good potential here. I hope they don't rush it. They have plenty of time to play it out. I'm not really sure what part Will is going to play in this, but I guess he's like the unifying force or something, even though that really should just be beating Moxley. He's the exposition, I guess.
Yeah, I liked the segment a lot last week. I talked last year about Tony Khan and AEW needs to get in the business of, are you in the Will Osprey business? You're in the Swerve Strickland business. Are you in the Hangman Page business? I thought that segment managed to establish these are your three top baby faces. You got Kenny Omega doing his thing with the International Championship, but these three are the main three going after Moxley. And when they're in the ring together, it establishes there's a novelty to them kind of banding together, or trying to band together, as Osprey said unsuccessfully, to fight off Moxley. And I think it actually helps define Moxley, who I think has struggled to get his character fully over with the confusion of, I want to make AEW better. Let me list some reasons that you're all going to nod along to that are good reasons that would make AEW better. And now please hate me. Now you have people who fans love in Osprey, Swerve, and Hangman. Some love all of them. Some love one more than others, or two more than the third. But there's support for them, and they're going, yeah, we got to take this guy down because he is dragging us down. And I think you need the baby faces to say that. And now they're setting up other matches amongst them too. I thought it's bringing out layers to the characters that humanizes them beyond just a talking point, bullet point promo that typically they do.
Yeah, it's made us as well see that this really is a Shades of Grey moment. I know how much you love that expression, but Hangman and Swerve are towing that line because they are supposed to be good guys, but they've both done these horrible things to each other. And now they're having to sort of find a way to coexist, or eventually they will, to be able to take on this greater evil. Mm-hmm. I think, the reunion when it happens, or the unification when it does happen, is going to be a moment, but it has to be done right. And I don't think you do it any earlier than 2 weeks before All In. I think if you do it any sooner than that, you're going to end up with way too long where they're buddy-buddy. So not the go-home show, but right before the go-home show needs to be the sort of nod of respect moment. And then there still needs to be some question going into the pay-per-view so that when Swerve does come out, we're still not sure if he's going to clock Hangman or take Claudio out.
One thing I liked in the match is you had Shafir and Wheeler. And then obviously we saw later Claudio. The idea that they're cheating to win. Like, you don't want Moxley to be a badass and successful without taking shortcuts and without cohorts helping him. Shafir running a distraction while Wheeler interfered, giving Moxley the win. Moxley should be able to beat Mark Briscoe on his own, but he kind of doesn't want to. He just make it easier for me. Let my guys interfere. Because then it doesn't feel like he's getting ganged up on by Swerve, Hangman, and Osprey. Like you don't want the heel to feel like he's being outnumbered. And so just that little touch helped too. Like I know it's Bobby's hometown, but MVP isn't exactly working hard to get booed. It's just, I don't know if he gets the concept of why truly fans are constantly going against stories being told on TV. And it's, yes, Shelton and Bobby are cool, but going back to WWE, part of the problem is they just don't actually go to heel one-on-one stuff to get booed. So with Moxley, they were. And so I'm glad we'll cover the MVP Moxley stuff. The MVP Hurt Syndicate stuff in a moment. So yeah, I like this. I mean, it's clear that's a top storyline in the company right now. They're all distinctly different. They're all doing some, good mic work. And so, thumbs up to it overall. Lady B says, I want Moxley to defend himself. He should have done a promo tonight after being said he's ruining the company. I don't know if he needs to do it this week. But Moxley needs to find a way to respond to this where it doesn't convince us he's right and they're wrong, but he should be defensive, I guess, about that. How would you handle what Lady B is suggesting, Chris?
I'm so glad you asked me that. I actually disagree with your point that people were nodding along with Jon Moxley when he was saying what's wrong with AEW, because the people that are left watching AEW don't take offense to this, Zach. You're Zach Barbers. They love everything AEW puts on the screen, and they don't think that Moxley's problems that he has with it are real problems. So if I'm booking this, I have Moxley say on the mic, of course you think I'm the problem. Because I'm trying to fix the real problem, which is people like you who would rather put on a 5-star match than win a title, or who would rather spend 15 minutes wrestling than winning in 3 minutes and going home to sit in the bath and relax, or something along those lines. Just talk about the fact that you think that because you are the problem. I am not the problem. I am trying to fix you, and you're the problem. And I don't care what it takes, Hangman. I'm going to show you, just get his normal tough guy lines out there. But that to me is the way you do it, is Mox comes out there and just says, yeah, you're right. You would think that because you are the problem.
Well, let's underline that, as you said, and make that case really clear, because it's a big match and a big show that they need to sell and get people lined up correctly with it. Yeah, fan blast. Good. Just going back to the point. Did the Attitude Era start all this company crap? We have the best company. Let's save the company. I'm wrestling to improve the company. Osprey did that. He said, I'll take a bullet for you, Swerve, but before that, I'll take a bullet for AEW. There were no chance for wrestling company initials, I don't think, until ECW. So yes. ECW started it, and ECW was an entity. It had baby faces and heels for sure, but it was a cause. It was a movement. It was, Paul Heyman called it a counterculture movement at the time. And so it embodied something in the spirit of the fan base, rebelling against the just kind of plain, ordinary, tired production of WWF and WCW in the early 90s. It was an answer to that. It was also, it was fascinating because I wrote an editorial about it way back in the early part of Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman's careers. Like we got to keep an eye on these two young 20-somethings with brilliant wrestling minds. They're the future of the business, and Cornette tried to take it back in time. Wrestling the way it used to be, wrestling the way you like it, was the motto for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, a regional territory. Paul Heyman, meanwhile, is building ECW up that is leaning forward in very low budget, a bunch of cast-off misfit talents, but leaning forward, and it captured the spirit of those Philadelphia and New York fans, and the brand ECW meant something, and it became brand-based. So ECW is part of the Attitude Era. Attitude Era wouldn't exist without ECW, or Stone Cold Steve Austin, or Vince Russo, or DX, or Eric Bischoff. I mean, there's a lot of contributors to it, NWO. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. I would be fine if we didn't have Raw the company. To me, ECW was an exception, but when others are doing it, it comes across to me like if ROH had that spirit, it's fine because they're a distant three, or a distant two. But when you're trying to present yourself on national cable as a basically an equal, we're worth $55 for a pay-per-view. We're worth you watching us instead of WWE and getting your ticket money. When you're talking about yourself as a company, you're now saying you are against WWE instead of we have these wrestlers in this world that you should immerse yourself in. So I don't like it. It's not, I don't think there's much we can do about it, but I think the wrestling company that says we have the best wrestling and fans are chanting your initials generally means they're a really far behind and they're stuck there. So you have an enthusiastic core, but to me, when you really rise up is when fans aren't thinking about the letters, they're thinking about the wrestlers, and they're chanting for the titles, the stipulate, the what's at stake in matches, and cheering for a certain wrestler to win, a certain wrestler to lose. That's a company that's on the rise or competing for number one. When they're chanting your initials, it's a core group of people going, we like you better despite the fact that you're a distant second or third. Chris?
I think that's where ECW was different because, yes, the fans were chanting ECW, but at no point did you get like a Sabu. Well, Sabu didn't talk, but like an RVD or a Dudley's going out there and saying, I'm out here to represent, to fight for the company and to save the company from somebody else. They talked about ECW as being different from the other promotions. Mm-hmm. And that was what was the problem. If we had people out there saying AEW isn't about putting YouTubers on TV, it's about finding out who the best wrestler is, I don't think we'd have as big of a problem with it.
Yep.
But we do have people out there talking about, I would do anything for this company that gave me a chance and pick me up off the streets. And I just want to do this for the fans. Like, no, you should be making me suspend my disbelief. The only thing I think you should be caring about is titles and checks. You shouldn't be worried about ratings or how many people are watching your program. But I don't get that watching AEW because to me, it feels like they're still trying to fight to show us that they're important.
Could you imagine the Oilers tonight, one of their star players saying, we are going to put on a great hockey game and it's going to put to shame the Thunder and the Pacers when it comes to TV ratings or excitement. Like, you should be focused on winning and beating the Panthers. Like, shut up. Like, your paycheck doesn't, your paycheck does depend on ratings and all that, but like, that shouldn't be on your mind. That's just a side effect of competing really hard to win. And sometimes it comes across that way. It'd be weird, to your Connor just going, oh yeah, I need, I hope we outdraw or we draw better ratings than last year's Stanley Cup. Like, you're trying to put on exciting games. Why don't you focus on winning? So, and then the ironic part is that's what leads to winning. In the business sense is when people get wrapped up in the competition on the screen.
It's funny you say that. Warning, this is a cricket reference that actually is relevant.
You've already lost me.
The England cricket team in the last couple of years has actually been making some waves because they've said, we're going out to be exciting and entertaining. We don't want draws. We're going out there, and they've almost as good as said, we don't care about winning. We want to entertain the spectators. And we think that this brand of cricket that we're playing is going to do that, which is in a real sport that you're hearing this. And it's sort of sent things into a tizzy because that's not how you talk about real sport. But it's so jarring because you don't expect it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, when you look at what they're doing, it would be so much different if it was, I want to win and I'm hoping that in winning I'm exciting. That's fine. But I would rather win in 30 seconds than take 30 minutes and get a 5-star match from somebody in California.
Yeah, you want to play a trap defense and win 1-0, not lose 6-5 in double overtime. Like, if you're a hockey team, like, sorry fans, we want to skate around with the Stanley Cup. We're playing a trap defense. We're winning 1-0. Once we got a 1-goal lead, no more goals.
Yep.
No more goals. It's going to be boring because we're going to win this game. And there are teams that did that, over the years. Okay, so let's shift to the Hurt Syndicate. MVP, MJF, fans cheering Bobby. MVP then points his cane at Shelton. The fans start chanting Shelton instead of Bobby. And then it was kind of amusing. He points his cane at MJF and fans boo. That was a fun TV moment. However, MJF is a heel, but Hurt Syndicate are still just sort of like, oh, it's fun. Look at, they're entertaining. They're cheering him. So, Chris, what is going on? I've been hard on MVP. I think he's got charisma and a presence, but I don't think he's good at steering the fans in the direction that is in a consistent way that's needed in order to benefit the babyface opponents they're wrestling. And it's unfair to the people he's standing opposite of. Jason Paul and I talked about that on the flagship yesterday. Jason brought up MVP disparaging Dustin and Sammy for not putting the ROH tag titles on the line. It's like, why is a heel manager calling out babyfaces for being too cowardly to put their belts on the line? Like, what purpose does that serve? Does it not run through a filter of ultimately what's our goal? Not here's a thought, let me just say it, to put myself over. So what do you think about that aspect of Hurt Syndicate, the struggle that Hurt Syndicate have going back to WWE to get the reaction that the promoter wants them to have and the booking is supposed to be steering people towards. And what do you think of the MJF involvement now that we're pretty full-fledged into it at this point?
I'm so over it. MJF just doesn't fit. He doesn't fit cosmetically. He doesn't fit personality-wise. He doesn't fit in terms of presentation. It doesn't make any sense. And all we're doing is sitting here waiting for the other foot to drop and for him to turn on them or for them to turn on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't need anyone to talk for him. The faction doesn't need him. And why would Bobby Lashley, who is known as a singles wrestler, be willing to let this guy join the faction and then openly talk about wanting to win singles gold? Shouldn't Bobby want that? Like, it's so stupid. And MVP, I get that he wants to be cheered, but that's not his role right now.
Right. And
if you can't get booed when somebody puts MJF with you, something is just not working. It's just they should just cut bait, give him the face run that he clearly wants, and then go from there. Because it's just right now it's just silly.
Yeah. Well, let's throw up Dougie Doug's comment here in the chat. I agreed with Wade. I agreed with you and Jason's comments on the flagship about how MVP doesn't have a great wrestling IQ. He buried Commander's look for no reason tonight when Commander came in already weak. So another example tonight on commentary. I feel the same way about Don Callis. Don Callis, to me, isn't always focused on, and a lot of wrestling managers are in the mode of I want to be as over as Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette were in the early 90s when everyone was talking about him into the 2000s, into the 2000s. I want to be talked about like Bobby Heenan, and they think their job is to be stand-up comedians. I think Don Callis too often is trying to, say something like, oh, I'm going to say this, and everyone in the back is going to go, I can't believe Don Callis said that. He popped us in the back with that little insider reference, as opposed to just getting his faction over or the match over. And so I think it's kind of a bit of a epidemic among managers in wrestling. Stokely got heat. I'd heard people were mad at Stokely because Stokely made his promos about him and not his people. I think Christian does a good job with it. We can talk about that. I'm trying to look for good examples of managers or manager-like advisors and stuff. But MVP does not seem to have a consistent constitution guiding him, which is everything I say should be edited to direct fans to react in the way that makes the most sense for whoever I'm wrestling next. And if you're wrestling baby faces, your job is to put them over. The number one job of heel isn't to get yourself over. It's to get your babyface opponents over. There's other things that matter, and I'm not saying it's the only thing, but ultimately, that's what they're there for. I feel referees are largely there to be invisible, except for a very key moment in the match that's supposed to get heat on the heels or sympathy on a babyface. Otherwise, do your job and don't draw attention to yourself. And so, I don't know. I think we made the point. It's kind of. But I think MVP's probably always been this way, and I think he's a product of kind of that early 2000s rise of the internet, and they define success not on ticket sales or getting booed in an old school way. They think it's past that. Now it's just time to be clever and have people pop for you. And like I said, Don Callis has that issue too with me over the decades.
I think a corollary to that is that getting somebody over doesn't mean losing to them necessarily. You can get someone over and still beat them. And we've seen some notable examples of that over the course of wrestling history. Look at Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13, for example. That's the most famous one I can think of off the top of my head. But a heel can get someone over by beating them and making them look good in the process. Yep. I think people miss that. People think putting someone over means automatically that you're losing to them. MJF said he's going to wrestle more. I'll believe it when I see it. But that is a good start.
Yep.
Getting him in the ring more often. Because we mentioned earlier that we have the three top baby faces. Who is the second biggest heel? I don't think we can give a clear answer on that right now.
Yeah. Maybe Okada becomes that, maybe not, because Okada could be going a different direction.
He certainly has the potential, but he's not playing up to it. The Bucks, Kyle Fletcher has sort of
he's walking out right now. Yeah.
MJF might probably be by default, but
for sure. Yeah.
He's sort of in a 6-man unit right now that isn't actually doing anything. I guess it's to keep him in a holding pattern while he isn't in the title picture.
Yeah.
But there isn't, you couldn't point to, okay, if Hangman wins, what is the natural first opponent for him on the heel side?
Right.
Yep, there's no good answer to that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they need MJF to get into a position where he is that second heel. Or then that would be by default put him up to the first heel. But they don't really have anything set up on that front.
Dougie Doug said, Bobby Lashley just seems like such a likable, smiley guy. It's hard not to want to cheer him. It's not just on MVP. It's on Lashley. It's on Shelton. I mean, there are moments where they've, the term shown ass, where you're like, you act like a big shot, but then as soon as things don't go your way, you run, you cheat, you look humiliated, you throw a fit. But it doesn't seem to be on his to-do list either, to make himself a heel. And I mean, the way that he, who was he with backstage? Was it Osprey he interacted with? Yes. And brushed? Yeah, it was a soccer shirt that he kind of brushed in. Like, that was sort of arrogant, but it was also something you could imagine a babyface doing to a heel who is full of himself too. So I think the key is if, Bobby and Shelton want to be heels with MJF and MVP, sit down and figure out how to do it. Come up with a plan. Zach Barber says, I'm glad that they're all behaving as heels. However, MVP healing on the crowd is an admission that they're having to try too hard to get guys who the crowd loves booed. Well, right. We have a problem. And just coming out and doing local, you people are stupid comments it's like cramming for a test. I mean, like, you should have been studying all semester and getting the crowd reacting to you when you walked out, not trying to reverse a bad crowd reaction with some irrelevant to the national audience crowd insults. I don't care about local insults. It doesn't make me mad sitting, 1,000 miles away from them. So, yeah, I mean, but you can do both. You can get you can get the crowd to boo you, while you're also doing consistent work to get the next crowd and the crowd after in future weeks to boo you. So, okay, let's see. There's another comment here I wanted to throw up from the chat. I guess I'm not sure what that was. Chris, let me throw to you. What do you want to bring up next as a topic list? I've been throwing you.
Let's have a look. I wanted to talk about the women's tag.
Yeah,
actually.
Mercedes Moné at ringside, literally eating a steak at her own table or having a steak in front of her.
Eating.
That's why I said sitting in front of her. Tony Storm ate the steak. Like,
terrible waste of what actually looked like a really well cooked steak. Although I'm sure you would disagree.
I know what a nicely cooked steak looks like, or an overcooked steak. They kind of look like how when Tony Storm got a hold of it, it was like Offensica back in like circa 1984 promos, eating the fish, just tearing the fish apart, like animalistically. She is. Anyway, that was quite the scene. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think as much as we talked about the 7 weeks from now to the pay-per-view for the Osprey stuff, that worked out. I don't think we're going to have as much luck with this. Mercedes sitting at ringside, not talking and making incredibly cartoonish facial expressions while there is a completely meaningless tag match happening in the ring is not the way I would want to start this build. It is the biggest women's match that they could do. Mm-hmm. But it almost feels like it got kind of marked down by this segment. They don't want them to touch. I get that. But then why did you do the tournament at the same time as the men's? It took all the attention away from it. And now you have this dead period where you have to build a match that really doesn't need much build. It's the two biggest names in the company in the women's division. Arguably, Toni Storm is one of the 3 or 4 biggest names in the company, period. Mm-hmm. And Mercedes has really stepped it up in terms of match quality. She's still annoying to watch. But this just felt so awkward and weird, and we have 7 more weeks of it to go.
I thought Mercedes, like, there's nothing you said is untrue, but I'm not sure that the cartoonish facial expressions isn't peak use of Mercedes with this much time to fill. Her going, I want a table to myself. I mean, the steak thing was weird. It felt like a setup for the gag with Tony afterwards more than something that she would actually want to do. So, in that sense, I didn't love it. But the idea that she's just sort of in La La Land doing her own thing, wanting to draw attention to herself and being snobbish about what's going on in the ring. I mean, you got to do something with her, and you can't put her and Tony in a face-to-face or debate every week. You don't want Mercedes standing in the middle of the ring trying to cut a promo on her own. So, having her be at ringside being just a snob is kind of what you need to do because you pay her a lot of money. She's a star. She's got a high recognition rating. She's not good on color commentary. So, I mean, you got to be creative and shake it up. But so basically, I won't let perfection or excellence or whatever, even competence, be the enemy of just finding creative variety of ways to get her on TV. Because the reality is they have to, or they don't have to, but I think they ought to.
Yeah, I know that's a thing. It's just, I think they've backed themselves into this corner. They didn't have to do both tournaments simultaneously.
Yep.
They had plenty of time to run one of them after the fact. And that way we wouldn't have to suffer through 7 weeks of build for 2 different title matches, one of which looks like they have a good plan to get there. But this one, I don't feel like they have a plan. Well, what is the plan? It doesn't seem like Mina Shirakawa needs to be involved. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Julia Hart, Sky Blue, as much as I love watching them, they don't really play into this at all.
Yep.
So I don't know how they're going to make this work in any way. They've got to have a better way around this somehow.
No, I agree. I mean, hopefully they put thought into it and they'll surprise us in coming weeks.
I will add, just by the way, I don't know if you saw it, they did a video package for Tekla, which I'm sure makes you happy, and Eric Kroll is somewhere swearing at the TV.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure that Eric Kroll disagrees with something I don't say, and he doesn't seem. I don't know that he's against introductory vignettes. He's against 12-minute video packages 3 times per hour on a show, which I've never advocated for, but that seems to be what he's always pushing back against. Hi, Eric. The chat had some comments on Mercedes. Zach Barber said, Mercedes isn't good on commentary, so I'm glad she opted to eat or sit in front of and smell and stare at a steak. I mean, that's kind of my point. Andrew H. says, Mercedes' character is 100% cringe and only good in the smallest of doses. Well, that's a problem when you're paying her the money you're paying her. You hope she's a draw. You want to let people know she's tied for your top female star and their match is epic. But it's tough. But, maybe there is a way to decide what is her character and come up with some vignettes or interacting with other people in different ways. I don't know. I mean, it's not my job to book it, but what I want to see on TV is what looks like a product of people sitting around, coming up with ideas and going and discarding 90% of them, but coming up with a month of material that makes it seem like AEW is in the Mercedes business. And it's not, we showed up at 4 p.m. What's Mercedes going to do today? Mercedes says, I was thinking I'll just order a steak and sit at ringside and be a snob. It's like, okay, what about next week, the week after, the week after? How do we really build this up, make it seem epic? And that's what Tony Khan, that's his job. That's the job of Mercedes as a top paid athlete to come up with that. Part of her job is not to have good matches. I said this about Kenny and the Bucks for years in AEW. It's not just to have good matches every once in a while. Ideally you would expand your game and be excellent in other areas that you didn't need to be excellent at to get the reputation you got from your work in Japan and in Reseda, so. Mm-hmm. Another comment, Lady B says, I'm a huge fan of Mercedes and Tony for different reasons. However, I never wanted them to feud as these characters. I'd rather see 2 guaranteed women's on All In. So what about keeping Mercedes and Tony separate? I mean, they're trying to establish All In, Lady B, as their WrestleMania, their marquee show right now, their Summer Spectacular. If it looks like you're punting on the biggest match and you're trying to build up Jamie Hayter or, whoever, you're almost saying, well, we're saving Mercedes Tony for another time. And you can, Tony's been criticized for waiting too long. Chris, what do you think?
But what is the other time? When is there a better time to do it?
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm not convinced you won't get a second women's match. There is no guarantee Mercedes walks into All In with all of the titles still. I can see a world where she wrestles Jamie Hayter or Mina Shirakawa and Tony costs her the match on the title. Because I do think Mercedes wins it All In. I believe that's where it's going. And I don't see them wanting to, well, having said that, Tony Khan does love his tournament, so maybe they would. But I don't think they're going to have Mercedes come out as a quadruple champion. That's just my gut feeling. But the more I think about it, having her pose with all those belts and then having an excuse to do another tournament does sound kind of like Tony Khan.
Yeah. Lady B says, I'd rather see a storyline with Tony and Jamie and Athena and Mercedes. I'm not sure with your use of symbols, if you want Tony and Jamie teaming up against Athena and Mercedes, or you want Tony and feuding with Jamie. The ampersand symbol in Torch World means they're a team. And so I'm a little lost, but I think the idea, let me think this through. I can decode this. Athena dash Mercedes would be they're facing each other and feuding with each other. I use slashes going back to like the 1980s for people teaming together. I'm all lost here. What do you like? Do you like that as an alternative? I think she's saying Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter. If Hayter won the Owen, and then Mercedes against Athena. That could have felt big, but they would have needed to plan with Jamie ahead of time. Sorry, Lady B, I don't mean to pick you. I just genuinely was trying to decode all these names out there.
I like both combinations. I think I like that with the singles matches, especially if they had let Athena and Mercedes get close to the time limit in the tournament before a winner. I don't even know if they have time limits in that. I can't remember. But if that had been longer and more competitive, I would love to see a feud between them. I'd love to see it anyway, but it would have storyline justification. But also, if they did Tony and Jamie against Athena and Mercedes, I'd be all about that too. And then you could have the two pairs split off and have Jamie and Mercedes feud, and then you can have Tony and Athena feud before you finally get to Tony and Mercedes. Any combination of those four women really would work for me. You're muted.
I think I broke my streak, but now we're starting to that's all right. That's all right. By the way, and when I talk into the microphone, I told other co-hosts this, like it flashes on my screen, you're muted. So I always catch myself, but everyone always catches me first before the screen alerts me to it. Had to let my dog in. He's like banging on the door, wanting to come into the studio here. So I had to step away and let him in. And although I don't think I muted then, I think I muted to cough or something. Anyway, who cares? Comment about there's comments in the chat right now about, well, Kyle Fassel said, there's too many multi-man matches tonight, especially for how long the show has been. It feels like they're cramming everyone on the show for some reason. There's a lot of multi-man matches going on here. Four-way and six-man tags. Collision is turning into what we kind of expected, Chris, which is why we're doing the show as a simulcast watch along. We had, the angle with Okada and a Hangman Moxley segment. Tony Khan, by the way, is a big announcement coming up at the end of the show, likely booking Kenny and Okada, I guess. Do you think, Chris?
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
so we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll table that. But it is 2 hours of, hey, look at all these talented wrestlers doing athletic things. Is that okay for this late at night on a 4-hour show? Just give people wrestling if they're and settle in and watch. I
think they need to try and keep it exciting. The thing is, not only are they cramming multi-man matches, there's an awful lot of lucha on this show, on both shows. And I think that's by design to get us ready for Grand Prix Mexico. Or Grand Slam Mexico, I should say. But I made note of that earlier in the night during the six-man tag. I made note to talk about that with Speedball and Commander, and then you had Rush and Drolistico and Mortos, and it's just there's an awful lot of lucha content to try and get us ready for the fact that we're about to have Forbidden Door Alpha. It's not that it's bad. It's just that there's an awful lot of talent you're not using. And here we are bringing in a bunch of other talent. And you're also taking Speedball, who we're still trying to find his level, and putting him in a match with 4 people who are nothing, really. And also Kevin Knight, who's also new. When was the last time Commander or La Facción Ingobernable were relevant? They haven't been. Like Bandito had a match against Jericho, and he wasn't even in the match. So you're by trying to put all these people into the show, and by giving us this lucha content to prep us for the Mexican event, you are also damaging the people that are in those matches who could be doing more important things. Yeah.
All right, Chris, let's jump to an email from JB and see some points that he wants to make. We'll keep an eye on the chat also. JB says, with the reaction that Swerve is getting relative to Osprey, it almost makes me want to say that it would make sense to turn Osprey heel while he's still at peak popularity. A heel Osprey versus face Swerve at All In would be fascinating. That being said, it'd be a shame to turn Osprey heel before he could be crowned champion as a proper face. Or is it more likely Swerve and Osprey team against the Bucks at All In? I think Swerve and Osprey being reluctant or coming around to be embracing being partners makes more sense. I did float the idea of Osprey turning heel. He was a little heelish at the last pay-per-view. I think to make people feel better about Hangman winning, I guess, or had a little bit more of an edge to him. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about the heel depth chart, they could use another top heel, but I think Osprey's too important. I think you got to build heels from elsewhere on the roster, not turn Osprey because of a need at this stage. Chris, what do you think?
I think you'd be fighting an even bigger uphill battle, trying to turn Will Ospreay than you do with MVP. Like, that seems like a fool's errand right now. The only way I could potentially see it happening is if he helps Moxley against Hangman, and that just would not make any sense.
Yeah. All right, 2. He adds, what are the chances they actually give away Osprey Swerve 2 on Dynamite last week? Will this match be more of a vehicle for an angle that makes sense for them to team at All In, as I had previously speculated? I think he meant next week. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like things were moving in that direction, but I don't know where it lands. Chris, do you?
Difficult to say. I think it's too early to tell yet, but there's got to be something along those lines coming. Otherwise, why are we doing all this?
I know, yeah, but I don't need to know. I'm okay being intrigued. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
Yep, I'm okay being intrigued.
I've had this conversation with my son a lot, who's rapidly growing disillusioned with WWE, and he always marvels at the fact that I can call angles pretty much before they happen.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, I called the finish of Orton and Cena down to the Truth interruption. But I told him, like, I actually prefer it when I can't do that, because if you can surprise somebody who's been watching wrestling for 40 years, you're doing a pretty good job, because I've pretty much seen most of the ways we can go now. And I mean, you've got a couple of years even on me for that. So you know where I'm going from that. If we can't tell what's happening, they're doing something right.
Yes, and I want to clarify, you're not saying be a hack booker who does surprises for the sake of surprises, even if they don't make sense, because we want to surprise the hardcore fans who see everything coming.
Right.
I agree with you that you don't want to follow tropes and cliches, but I think it's important to note sometimes I'll use the old classic I Love Lucy example. Yeah, no, Ricky's going to find out what her scheme is, but you still watch because they're entertaining. They're going to do it in an entertaining way. Their characters are well developed, and you just aren't going to be you're going to be engrossed in how it all plays out.
The
Classic formula
in wrestling, because they work.
Yep.
And as long as you don't use the same one over and over again, there are plenty you can go to.
Yep.
And, I might know, okay, this match is going to end because the heel is going to cheat, but I don't know how. I don't know what the type of cheating is. And unless if it's not completely obvious, then I'm still intrigued. If I know exactly what's going to happen, I'm less likely to want to watch the match all the way through. During the Attitude Era, I was notorious for turning off pay-per-views before the main event, because I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no point watching it. Austin is going to either get screwed over, or they're going to try and screw him over, and he's going to find a way out of it. And it was the same way every single time. I didn't need to see it.
Yeah, I knew what you're getting at. I just wanted to clarify that there's two kinds of surprises. There's, let me put a new spin, a fresh spin, or a retro spin on something to break from the trope and the cliche and the repetitiveness of what they're doing now. And then that's the good way. The bad way is, let's just do something out of the blue that makes no sense, like introducing the murderer in the last scene of a play who hasn't been in the play until the last scene. That's not how you do a whodunit. And yes, it'd be surprising, but it'd be lame. All right, JB says, I like that Mark Briscoe had a reason for wanting this match with Mox tonight, that being his son asked him if he quit against Mox last week. Obviously, the outcome of the match had little intrigue, but I think that in a vacuum it worked in this case. I like that they just put a promo with Mark Briscoe on before the match and showed his intensity. It's a non-title match. Taz said, hey, you still can prove a lot in a non-title match. I don't think you should run from non-title matches. Just own it. Briscoe hasn't earned a shot, but he can, without a fancy eliminator name on it or whatever, impress people by putting in a good showing, lasting 10 plus minutes, and on occasion, an upset win can elevate somebody. So, I'm glad that right before the match they let Mark talk a little bit. You want to remind people of why they're rooting for Mark Briscoe, and part of it is his earnest and wacky character that also has a serious side to him.
I also liked that he used one of the very few justifications for not wanting the title. It's like, my family, the respect of my children is more important. Yeah, I buy that. That's one of the few things that should be more important than winning a championship. And Mark Briscoe is really good at passion. He's really good at making you believe, even without going to the goofy stuff. I mean, he's an incredibly intelligent guy, despite how he comes across. And he really did a good job of making me think, okay, this is emotional for him. And that's why it matters. The match, if you'd asked me to write you an AI-style summary of a Moxley versus Mark Briscoe match, I probably could have come within a couple of moves of explaining exactly what happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but Moxley, I don't even think Moxley is phoning it in anymore. I think he's just taping a note to the leg of a pigeon and hoping it goes to the right direction.
I think with Moxley too, it's when he's not using a bunch of weapons and bleeding and doing hardcore stuff, I think he underestimates how engrossing his match can be. I like this. I thought it was a good opening TV match against top of the second tier guy. Kind of, the more, I don't know, he's in that kind of Orange Cassidy role. You never know, and we like him. That's kind of where Briscoe is. All right, JB says the Jet Speed, Commander, and LFI Trios match had some serious hang time. Also, finally, we actually have a punny tag team name that makes sense with Jet Speed. If built correctly, I could view Jet Speed as a viable tag title contender. So that's part of what they're doing tonight is trying to MVP. We talk about him not being a master of getting the reaction that the booking structure is calling for. But the idea that we are a superior tag team. This is supposed to be we're the best wrestle. We're the best tag teams. I think a lot of people are nodding, going, yeah. Private Party have disappeared. FTR is sort of a Collision exclusive. The Young Bucks are, kind of in their own, we had the Codyverse. The Bucks are often in the Bucksverse. So who are going to be these challengers for Shelton and Lashley? Well, I mean, Speedball and Kevin Knight is a pretty exciting team. But, Chris, they got to show that they're for real, that they're a team that is invested in being a team, and tell a story and get people invested in them, not have them show up on Dynamite and suddenly be number one contenders because MVP said, hey, we need someone to challenge us.
How about they win a match?
Yeah, exactly. How about for a couple months even? Yeah.
Against somebody who's an established tag team and not, like Lee Johnson and Blake Christian, who might actually be on my TV right now. That doesn't, just because you're two good wrestlers who came in at around the same time and have a catchy tag team name doesn't make you a tag team contender. But who is that? What contenders can they beat? The AEW used to have an amazing tag team division, and now they have two tag teams, and one of them doesn't seem interested in doing anything except for, stealing Randy Orton's tagline and trying to be evil, nasty people to Nigel McGuinness. So it's weird. I was waiting for you to pick it up this time. You're muted again.
See, talk about showing me up. I'm like, oh, you don't say anything. I'll see it. I'm looking over on the right side of my screen watching Billy Gunn tower over Anthony Bowens, and as I was talking. So normally I'm not distracted like that. Damn. All right. No, I can't listen to Bowens right now. Let's literally, I can't. That would bring the show to a halt if it hasn't already. All right, moving on to JB's next comment. How long do we see MJF actually remaining in the Hurt Syndicate? I'd have to imagine the conclusion to whatever this is will culminate at All In. So is part of the problem with Hurt Syndicate trying to go full heel that, yeah, they went full heel in certain ways and healing on the crowd and aligning with MJF and embracing him cheating on their behalf. But is the end goal to have MJF be heel and feud with Bobby and Shelton and MVP? So they want to go heel, but they don't want to go heel. So they're kind of, sending mixed signals, and it is a short-term run as heels before they know the fans will embrace them and cheer them because they're not taking seriously that they're heels right now. I don't love that story. I'd rather have MJF, Bobby, and Shelton be more, I don't know, it's tough to do it. If you have MJF helping you win and you don't care, it's hard to mask that. So I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, the bigger issue for me is how do you do a feud between one heel and three faces? I don't want to see another MJF faction. That's been tried and failed a couple of times. So how do we get to the point where MJF turns on them but isn't outnumbered and doesn't feel like he's just, walking uphill in the wind?
Yeah.
It's a weird situation, and I don't see a good off ramp to it, which has been part of my problem with it from the beginning.
Yeah. Derek Mitchell in the chat says the Bucks are in their own universe. FTR called themselves the greatest tag team ever, but the Hurt Syndicate do not have any viable tag team contenders, and Kevin Knight and Speedball doesn't do it for me. Kevin Knight and Speedball need to do it for you. If they're going to do it for you, AEW needs to show you why they're good and establish that they're a two-man team with aspirations and proving they deserve it. And that takes some planning. And, the tag division is kind of an out of nowhere division where, time to come up with new contenders. Here they are. Here's a shortcut way to do it. Do you agree? But yeah, MJF should stay heel, and he wrestles more often. And MJF against a babyface Bobby Lashley, people will react to it. I don't know that we're going to have a super coherent, cogent, cohesive copyright Paul Heyman journey to get there.
No.
All right. The Lashley Osprey stared on backstage was interesting. I wonder if and when we'll see that match. An Osprey Swerve Hangman Alliance versus HS and MJF would be very intriguing. Yeah, I mean, if Osprey stays babyface, fully expect he will. Lashley's currently a heel. That'd be a match worth going to, but it's a little I'm not again. I think we can handle more than the wrestlers only having issues with the person they're currently feuding with, and I'm okay with planting seeds, but you don't want that to distract from what's going on right now with Osprey. But if they're going to get to it pretty quick, they've got a couple months to fill here, or month plus now. Maybe they can get to it sooner or at All In. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I hope they do get to it sooner, and I hope they have a plan to get to it and to make it make sense. I don't really want to wait another 7 weeks to get the payoff on this, but it's possible that that's what they need to do in order to find a way to get MJF some support in this. Yeah. I don't know, surely they're not going to go down the Wardlow road again. I don't really know who else is out there that could be those extra bodies for him. But yeah, I hope All In is the end of it and not the beginning of the breakup.
We had a comment earlier, and this applies to MJF in a way, that AEW is finding that WCW sweet spot when it comes to usage of luchadors. Zach Barber said it really feels like AEW has found that WCW sweet spot with usage of luchadors. Do you agree with that? And give a little history lesson, Chris, of what that means for newer fans.
So WCW used their luchadors primarily to populate the they were cruiserweight, not light heavyweight, cruiserweight division. And that's where Rey Mysterio first got noticed. I mean, he started in ECW, but he came to national notice in WCW. You had Juventud Guerrera, you had Psicosis. I think La Parca had a spell there as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think we tend to remember that a bit with rose-tinted glasses. I mean, Eddie and Chavo were both there, and Eddie was a cruiserweight at the time. But we always seem to forget that those matches were largely ignored by the top brass. Eric Bischoff just told them to go out and do whatever they wanted. Mm-hmm. And it didn't really have anything to do with booking them or anything like that. And they were given free reign. They didn't really do anything for the ratings. They were probably the best wrestling on the show, but they weren't that popular. I don't think AEW is trying to do that. I think they're just bringing in good talent. I mean, Hechicero is amazing. I love watching him. Lucha is not my thing. I'm not a fan of it, but I recognize that a lot of people are, and I don't begrudge it being on the show. It's just, I think it sort of came out of nowhere. There have been some Lucha guys on the show. You've had your Banditos, your Rushas, but they are more of a physical smash mouth style that feels more at home in North America. But it's when you bring in people like Commander, like Gravity, who rely on a lot of standing around and a lot of running the ropes and flipping around. North American audiences aren't used to seeing that, and it kind of makes it feel a little awkward.
Yeah.
And even the WCW usage of the luchadors, they weren't doing that stuff. The stuff they were doing was innovative in terms of North America. We hadn't seen people doing 450s and shooting stars and stuff like that. But the stuff that we're seeing now that's innovative just looks a little too contrived for my tastes.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's definitely a different style. I mean, when I used to watch like a UFC event back to back with like watching SmackDown if I missed it from the Friday Night SmackDown. So I watch UFC side on it, then I'd watch a SmackDown, and it was like so hard to readjust to how fake pro wrestling is. Like, why, if you can stomp on a guy and he's not doing anything, why not keep stomping on him until he's can't move anymore? Why do you have like? There's no requirement you have to do a variety of entertaining moves and stop doing something that's working when a guy has no defense. And then so you get used to what you watch. And people who are into lucha style get used to what they watch, and they, sometimes get a little offended by people who are like, well, that's fake. And it's like, well, watch UFC for 2 weeks straight and then watch pro wrestling for the first time in 2 weeks. It'll look that fake to you too. Yes and no. What the luchadors in the WCW era did was give modern, sleek, cutting edge athleticism in a big dose on a national scale with big production values that the United States and Canada had not seen before. And they needed it because their top guys were Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, DDP, Sting. I mean, they just, Lex Luger, they weren't, I'm sorry, they needed that world-class athleticism. And it is, and I've written this and talked about it in the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter back issues. You'll see me celebrating and drawing attention to it. The luchadors are one of the most underrated aspects of what gave Nitro their big winning streak over Raw. Vince McMahon was stuck with dancing hillbillies and, Bret Hart being this flashy wrestler, and he wasn't. He was a fundamentally sound wrestler, but, he wasn't flashy. That was a huge part of WCW being cool, is that athleticism. And even everything you said is right. They weren't important. They didn't get talked about. They were just sort of a sideshow. Man, they were entertaining, and it added a lot to the talking segments and the non-main events that WCW promoted with, as Eric Bischoff called them, the big boys. So that was a very important part of WCW. Wow. AEW doesn't need that. They don't need luchadors at creating action because their big boys are better than the luchadors that are being featured in terms of being exciting and athletic. So I don't agree with Zach in terms of the sweet spot. And I think, frankly, I think they're going to be in trouble if they feature too many mass luchadors on their show. WWE's doing that with their Worlds Collide thing coming up Saturday. We're seeing more of that. I think there's danger in that. I think people want to know, they want to connect with a face, with a promo, with a journey. There has to be a connection. There needs to be communication. There can be a novelty, and you can work around it. But I don't think just throwing them out there and going, aren't they exciting? And let me tell you about their heritage is enough to hold an audience, to hold the full Dynamite audience and the audience AEW aspires to have. Chris?
Don't forget as well that a lot of those luchadors, they weren't just wrestling each other, because you had Brian Pillman at the start of it. You had Chris Jericho. You had Dean Malenko. Who were all, English-speaking, unmasked. And Eddie Guerrero, although he is a Mexican, is not masked and spoke perfect English. So you didn't have that uphill battle that a lot of these luchadors are fighting, where we're not used to masked wrestlers. There's been one or two that got over to any degree in North America. And you're looking at a situation where you don't have that English-speaking star to break it up and to be their opponents. You also have to take into account that AEW's top of the card is stacked, and none of the luchadors are anywhere near it. The closest that I could see would be Rush and or Bandito, but the only one that's even been close to being treated seriously recently is Bandito, and then he disappeared.
Yeah, that's right. Vignettes and 3 weeks of TV, whatever, and then boom,
and an ROH World Title match, which he lost. And did he? No, he did. He is still. Is he still there? See, we don't even know if he's still the ROH World Champion. I believe he is, right?
Well, if you're not watching ROH, you're only watching AEW Dynamite. You don't know, but yeah, Bandito's the ROH champion. But he disappeared from AEW proper. I mean, they did vignettes. They got, they're trying to get AEW fans invested in him. And now he's off in this promotion where belts show up, but they never tell you how to watch it, why it exists, or anything. It's still, I don't want to. Jason Paul and I every other show do 10 minutes on it. Like, why does ROH exist? Why doesn't anybody ask Tony Khan to define it in the narrative structure of AEW better?
I don't even know if he came out with the belt tonight.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nick Wayne came out with his belt. I mean, he is defending it.
Yeah, he's defending it, yeah.
But he also came out with it all throughout Best of the Super Juniors, where, by the way, he was phenomenal.
He is.
He's going to be very, very special when he fills out a bit. But yeah, like the luchadors, it's not for me, but I can overlook that. I don't think it adds anything to the company.
No,
right now.
I think Tony Khan is a 90s wrestling kid who wants to relive how cool it felt when the rest of the world was acknowledged. If Vince McMahon spent the 80s pretending the rest of the wrestling world didn't exist, and it felt eye-opening and admirable and gracious, and embracing the idea that there's this whole industry that we're part of. That's great, but it's not the key to drawing money and competing with WWE in 2025. It's being a 90s kid trying to relive some of that stuff. Not that there isn't some merit in some of those ideas, but they need to be updated. As King of Strong Style says, I don't think they do a good job of presenting Lucha and why you should watch it. It just feels like more stuff on the show. And that is an ongoing issue with AEW. There's just too many things that are on there because, well, if you're a hardcore fan, you know this is special. And if you don't, well, just watch. It'll be exciting. Yeah. Derek Mitchell says Bandito did come out with the belt tonight, by the way. So,
okay.
But the thing is like they did vignettes. They got you interested in them in the AEW universe. And then like so many things happen, and granted that's going to happen. I mean, there's going to be casual WWE fans wondering what happened to Carlito, if they don't write him off the show. But what happened to Nyla? What happened to Britt Baker? Like there's just people who go poof, and there's different reasons for all of them. Anyway, back to JB's email. It's definitely interesting to seeing MJF wrestle the next 2 weeks. Granted, the match next week is a trios match, as actual matches seem to be few and far in between. I'm curious to see what Hurt Syndicate's role will be in MJF's match against Mystico in 2 weeks at Grand Slam Mexico. What did you think, speaking of luchadors, what did you think of MJF saying, "Oh, you're a big shot, prove it to me. And if I'm impressed, I'll give you the benefit of wrestling me at Grand Slam"?
I like the match. The way it was made fits Max or MJF's character, and I do think it'll be good. Like MJF has shown that he can hang with people who are known for their in-ring expertise. Mystico is very different from those, though, so I'm not entirely sure, like if the styles will mesh, but I believe they will. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
Yep. All right, JB also says, since I'm sending this in before the end of Collision, I'm curious if Kip Sabian's gift to Nick Wayne is the turn that finally separates Wayne and or Christian from the patriarchy. What do you think of the Nick-Christian dynamic? By the way, Nick's acting not great tonight in that promo segment. That was rough. The facial expressions are a little heavy-handed, maybe a little. Genuinely speaking, a little acting school might be good for him because I think he's got a bright future. Chris, your thoughts on the Christian Nick dynamic that's going on as we speak? We're live watching it now.
I think it's building nicely. I don't think you want to drag it out too much longer, but yeah, it's almost inevitable that it's coming soon. Nick Wayne, that is his weak point, is his microphone skills. He has a presence. He makes you want to dislike him.
Yeah.
In Japan, he did play face a little. The fans were all ready to cheer him. He had a couple of really big wins. He has a ready-made match at Forbidden Door as well. Anybody who has access or the means to watch New Japan should definitely go and watch some of his matches from that tournament. Watch his match against El Desperado for sure. But I think, yeah, you're right. He kind of damaged the gravity of the segment with his sort of overacting, over facializing of his delivery. I didn't see Kip Sabian at all. I don't know if I blinked and missed it in the match. I love Kip Sabian. I think he's severely underused. He's just a victim of the fact that there are so many people that look exactly like him and wrestle exactly like him in this company.
Yeah, early on in AEW, like, oh, here's Kip Sabian. You're like, oh, and then there's Sammy Guevara, and then there's Jungle Boy, and then there's like one after another of like, I mean, they're all their mothers can tell them apart, but like a wrestling fan is like, what distinguishes them from one another? Jack Evans was in the mix, I mean, it's just, but
Pac as well, right?
What's that?
Even Pac would fit into that description.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yep. So, the match is going on now. Christian said Kip's, working on his own surprise. So that could play into it. It doesn't mean that he needs to be involved in the match until the end or something afterwards. So we'll see. And I want to ask if anything surprised you or disappointed you about Nick Wayne in Japan, and what did you learn about him? What should Tony Khan have learned about him if Tony Khan watched his matches in terms of, in this context, he showed me this, therefore a year from now or give or take, I want to steer him this direction. Because when I pick on his acting, I think his facial expressions in the ring are good. I think when he's in this element of being in the ring, I think he's great. It's his acting when he's talking and interacting with Christian that often it just feels strained.
He has the tendency to go a bit Ultimate Warrior when he's firing up, when he's got the babyface fire segment. He gets all the puffy cheeks and there's a babyface waiting to happen there. I think some of his overacting right now is because he's trying to look tough.
Yep.
Which as a skinny 19-year-old is difficult to do.
He's not skinny anymore. He was skinny a year ago.
He was standing next to some of the junior heavyweights in Japan and looking skinny.
Okay, well, fair enough.
Especially next to Kevin Knight, but Kevin Knight is probably over 220 right now.
I bet he's got more muscle than any high school football player at my local high school right now. I mean, he's bulked up. But granted, I grant your point to the New Japan Junior Heavyweights.
I do agree that he's. Well, I would say that if Tony Khan is watching, he will see Nick Wayne has a baby face waiting to happen as a sort of Bret Hart style. Everybody loves me because I'm just so gosh darn cute type thing. He's incredibly athletic, and he has a wide variety of moves that he hasn't shown really in AEW thus far. But he hasn't had a chance to. His matches are not exactly long. I think the best way to use him is sort of like a cross between a Darby Allin and an Orange Cassidy, that sort of really resilient face who comes back with exciting spots and is able to pull out a win seemingly out of nowhere. He did beat the current junior heavyweight champion, which is probably going to secure him a title match, I would imagine, at Forbidden Door. But then he lost a bunch in a row towards the end of the tournament. So he was never going to win the tournament. They don't tend to do that for visiting wrestlers. But he impressed me, and the fans got behind him almost immediately.
I point this out often, but if you can find some Global Wrestling Federation early 90s Lightning Kid as a heel, Joe Pedicino's promotion, Nick Wayne as a spitting image of 20-ish-year-old Sean Waltman, later X-Pac, of course, 1-2-3 Kid. But he was a heel Lightning Kid and similar physique, similar facial expressions. I mean, it's crazy. Nick Wayne as a heel and some of the... I mean, I don't know if he's ever talked about it. I assume Nick Wayne has seen that material. If he hasn't, he should watch it on split screen because he'd be amazed at the similarities.
If I remember correctly, didn't he use the tombstone as a finisher?
Ooh, good question.
I think so. Because I remember seeing this skinny, greasy-haired kid using a tombstone and thinking, that's weird.
Yeah.
But I was a big GWF fan. For some reason, I loved Rock and Roll Zoomhoff and Iceman King Parsons, probably because I was like 11 at the time.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember seeing the Lightning Kid come up and being like, wow, he's cool.
I think Lightning Kid as a heel had Speedball Mike Bailey's hair.
Yeah,
am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
Yeah. It just struck me. They put a Speedball graphic on the screen. I'm like, oh, that looks like Lightning Kid, early 90s. Tekla, what have you thought of the build for her?
I knew very little about her coming in, so it's good to be able to get some sort of a context on this. It's made her look incredibly dangerous. It reminds me of what NXT did for Zarya when she came in. Just made her seem like this unstoppable beatdown machine. And I just finished watching her match. You'll never guess who won.
Their gear looks too much the same, by the way. If you watch this match and you didn't pay close attention, you wouldn't know which one was Tekla. Like, they both look like they're equal stars. Like, you need to have jobbers look like jobbers.
To her credit, she did win quickly. But I would also point out that Okada and Kenny Omega seem to have made their gear from the same fabric earlier on. So this isn't the first time it's happened tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she's going to be an interesting one to watch. She is a vicious wrestler. I don't think we really have one of those in the women's division in AEW right now. Chris Statlander was close to it, but she's sort of not really being relevant right now. I would love to see her and Jamie Hayter actually take each other on, because they seem like they'd have a good clash of styles there, and obviously that is what they're building to as her first feud. They've done a better job of introducing her and telling us why we should care than most they have with most new people.
So if Tony Khan's announcement is Kenny Omega and Okada, I don't know if you got to pay close enough attention to the angle because we're starting the show, but do you like the journey that they're taking to get there? What do you want to see to get the most out of it? What more does Tony Khan have to do to not make this feel like a nostalgia match of reliving, your high school football letter jacket days from 8 years ago?
So I'll put on two different hats here. Chris, the New Japan fan, needs them to step in the ring, and I will be incredibly excited because they're not capable of having a bad match with each other.
Yeah.
From an objective standpoint, the most important thing they need to do to build this is to take away the jokiness of Okada. He needs to find a more serious way to present himself. Stop saying bitch every week. Stop being like this, almost like a caricature of himself, and actually start taking things seriously. And maybe this is how they get him there. And he realizes that in order to beat Omega, he does need to be serious. The reason he lost to Omega in the 75-minute epic was that the story they told on commentary was that Omega had been training hard, doing cardio, planning to go deep, and Okada had gone fishing before the match because he wasn't taking it seriously because he'd beaten Omega so many times. And I think if they go and play off that and say Okada knows that he has to be serious to beat Omega because last time he wasn't, he lost, that could both rehabilitate Okada and make him serious and make fans go, oh, so this is what people were talking about when they told me this is the best wrestler in the world. I need to see this.
Kyle Fassel said this match doesn't seem like a big deal if you've never watched New Japan, and that's what they got to do. They got to take that into account. I mean, obviously, I think one of the big shortcomings of Tony Khan as a booker, as a visionary promoter, is looking to the second, the old vaunted second million fans that he should have aspired to bring in. And Excalibur was the wrong guy to bring people in. He could recite a lot of facts, but he didn't seem excited to bring new people in. He just seemed excited to show people who already knew how much he knew. And, they didn't have that great communicator to get people excited about things that they didn't know about. And then some of it there is a little bit of reliving the past. Some wrestlers got big paydays, and it showed in terms of what, whether they're willing to kind of expand what it takes to be a big draw on national cable on a week-to-week basis, or all kinds of things working against it. But Okada Omega is the peak dream inspiration, the dream singles match for what Tony Khan, when AEW was just a twinkle in his eye as a super fan, what he imagined maybe be able to feature in a stadium show on pay-per-view. It's Okada Omega, and I hope he brings it. I hope that he understands there's the New Japan fanatics from 5-8 years ago who are going to just be like, oh God, I got to be there, I want to see this. But you got to tell the story to people who consider themselves really hardcore American-based cable viewers of pro wrestling fans, and make sure Kenny and Okada know that too. Like get them excited. Derek Mitchell says Okada and Omega and AEW just doesn't feel like it would be special. Okada's been uninspired since debuting in AEW and not showing anything close to what he was in New Japan. Kyle Fassel says, man, Wade, your talk of the second million was already 5 years ago. Yes. I don't say it often anymore because they're just trying to get back to close to 1 million.
I remember when you started talking about it. I remember that was one of the first shows I called in and said, I'm not sure they can keep the first million.
Yep. Look at you. You were right.
Listen, sometimes even a blind squirrel catches a nut every now and then. By the way, we were, of course, correct. They have announced it. Winner takes all. Okada Omega for All In is probably on the screen now. Please let that be the end of the International Championship.
Yeah. So, I mean, having fewer titles is a good thing, for sure. And having high stakes. I don't know if merging international and continental feels high stakes. It's just sort of like, oh, good, not like wow. But it is official. So, Kyle Fassel says to an AEW fan, Okada is mid card. Lady B says Okada Omega. They made it official. They are announcing this, Chris, at 11:48 p.m. on a Wednesday night on a Collision portion of a 4-hour Fyter Fest doubleheader.
Central Time.
I said 11. No, I said 11 today. 11:48.
Oh, is it? I can't do math. Yeah, you did say 11:48.
Yeah. Although it's actually only 9:48 where they're doing this in Denver. So I think they're actually they better be Mountain Time because the whole time zone's named after them. So nevertheless, I don't know that that's the best circumstance to announce it. It won't matter in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? But like announcing it near the end of a Collision show. Yeah, I don't know. It's too bad that it happened that way, but the angle to set it up certainly happened while a lot of people were still watching.
Yeah, and I agree that Okada feels mid-cut. I don't think that's irreparable. I think if they do say Okada is now having to get serious, like I was thinking, and he has some matches where he very what's the word I'm looking for? Mechanically or methodically, there we go, takes apart some upper mid-card guys. I think they can make this feel more important than it does right now. As a New Japan fan, it is a holy grail match for me. I would love to be able to see it live, but I actually don't think it's as much of a dream match as Okada Osprey or Omega Osprey, both of which we've seen before as well.
In 2025, that's true.
And I mean, genuinely, I don't think there are many dream matches in wrestling left, period. No. Almost all of them involve Seth Rollins.
As a third wrestler in a triple.
Just like Seth Rollins against Omega, against Osprey, against Okada.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, all of the matches that I can think of between really great wrestlers,
interesting,
we've seen.
Yeah. Well, but WWE's setting up the future in that regard, because I thought that's where you're going. Seth Rollins against Braun Breaker. Seth Rollins in a rematch finally against Roman Reigns. I think that's where they're trying to head.
They are, but I don't really see either of those on the same level in terms of in-ring competition. I don't believe we've seen Danielson and Osprey. That might be the only dream match that we're actually likely to get. I don't think we've seen that one. I could be wrong though.
Let's bring Andy from Houston on, and it'll probably be close to the wrap-up of the show here. Andy, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind about tonight's Fyter Fest Dynamite Collision doubleheader?
Not much. I really was only watching Fyter Fest to get the Tekla's debut match, and so I was very, very annoyed at the fact that it's this late into the whole Fyter Fest when the crowd has had so much action going on with all the other matches. And if somebody is considered to be a big get, why do you wait so long to debut them on what is considered your secondary show, regardless that this is a whole, super event back to back? Why wouldn't you get her there as early as possible to really take advantage of an energetic crowd?
Andy, I mean, if the idea is she's a big deal, and we want to introduce you to her, I don't think she's a ratings draw at this point to stay tuned for. So they would have been better off. I mean, granted, I've never formatted a pro wrestling TV show, and I understand Tony makes tough choices sometimes. And is understanding of the downside of some of the choices that he makes, because there's an opportunity cost. If you put Tekla on the first hour of Dynamite, something else gets shortened or pushed off the show that he thinks is more important. And that was a pretty jam-packed, fast-paced 2-hour show. Maybe you just don't put her on tonight's episode if you can't debut her until over 90 minutes into the show. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the card and seeing if there was any obvious place you could have put her. Maybe you swap her with the Tony and the Tony Storm tag match would really be the only thing I could see.
I disagree. I could imagine Tony Khan thinking that and going, you know what? we're playing long ball with Tekla, but Mercedes and Tony need a big audience. That's a big match, and we want to establish it here on Fyter Fest. I mean, I would vote for what they did in that respect.
Yeah, that's fair too. The Hurt Syndicate talk segment I could have done without, but it did play into the 6-man.
And it's more important than Tekla. It just is. I'm sorry, Andy. I mean, like, you've got... Could you have shortened the women's tag? And I mean, no, you can't really wedge it in. I that's the thing, Andy. What would you have bumped, Andy?
Well, I don't know. I just think as a decision, it may have been better to maybe
Max
say
Caster.
do a vignette or an.
Sorry, T, all over you. Max Caster segment. That's easy trade, right?
Yeah,
Andy.
Well, you could bump Max Caster anytime, really.
Yeah,
but
I think people are screaming at us if they're thinking of the format of the show. Well, just bump Max Caster Powerhouse Hobbs. Although that did go like, I don't know. It probably lasted from the whole talking segment to the end when he won, probably about as long as Tekla's match and intro did. So that would have worked.
I don't know if you caught it, Andy, but they did do a video vignette for Tekla on Dynamite.
Okay, I must have. I must have missed that, but I guess in my mind it actually would have been better to, I guess, prepare the audience for her this week with a vignette, not unlike what they showed with Stephanie Vaquer on Monday night, but something a little more objective oriented. Saying like she's there to, hurt all the superstar wrestlers or, something similar to her idol killer gimmick in Stardom. And then, get people acclimated to her character and then debut her match next week when it can be on Dynamite during primetime hours. And then it's almost like they rushed her first match but placed it in an inconvenient spot to really maximize building up her star power, because you can tell with this one match that she's got an intensity to her and what seems like something that can be very much marketed as a star female wrestler that they need to take advantage of and see how they can build.
And it's maybe not a super relevant or fair question, but I'm curious. Do you think if you're AEW, you'd rather have Mariah May or Tekla?
Personality-wise, I would go with Tekla, but I know, entertainment-wise, a lot of people might side with Mariah May with the way she played off of Toni Storm, but I really haven't paid enough attention. Like, Mariah May didn't catch my attention in the same way that Tekla did with her debut. Like, as soon as I saw her lay out Jamie Hayter, I was like, okay, I got to look this person up. And then I just went down this rabbit hole of interviews and looking at Stardom matches and just there's more. I don't want to say depth, but it just seems like there's something more to Tekla as a character that you can work with.
Yeah,
and I mean, I could be completely wrong on that.
They're very different. I need to see more Tekla in an AEW context to make that choice, and also see how Mariah May, takes hold in NXT and WWE. I just threw that out there because it's like, they lost, but they are replacing losses with, promising or, intriguing talent. So, Andy, anything else you want to bring up?
No, that was it.
All right.
I'm normally not an AEW watcher because I don't have TBS with my cable package, but since this was showing on Max, it was something I could actually look at, more in real time rather than through YouTube clips or anything like that.
Well, it's always on Max now. Dynamite and Collision are always on Max.
Well, then I might have to take another look.
Yeah. Yep. You can catch up and watch live. They simulcast. Well, great, Andy.
I'll have to see if I can condition myself from being so biased towards WWE here.
Just watch what you enjoy. You're a consumer. They got to earn your time. It's not.
You're allowed to like both. Too.
Yep. You can like both. You can dislike both. You can ebb and flow. Hold them accountable for the quality they're putting out. That's true for any entertainment or business. Thanks, Andy. Always good hearing from you. Chris, is there anything else you want to sneak in here before we sign off?
I do. I have a friend who's at the show tonight. He was going to call in, but he really wanted to watch Collision. You'd get along with him really well. He did mention that before the end of Dynamite, the one food concession stand in the building had sold out of food.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. That's so...
I don't know if that's because people went in stoned and got the munchies, or if there's going to be an awful lot of angry stoned people with the munchies at the end of the night. I don't know, but that does not seem ideal to me. They might have picked up on their merch sales, but they certainly haven't picked up on venues with sufficient food quality.
Yes.
I don't. Oh, on the note of people like sort of making fun of the company and making things look bad, Hurt Syndicate talking about not having any relevant opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's true, but that's kind of quiet part out loud type stuff that I think you don't really need to say that even as a heel, because why do we want to watch? Like Sammy Guevara was one of your opponents, and now we think that Sammy Guevara is persona non grata. So possibly not the best choice of words there. Otherwise, like we said at the start of the show, it zipped by. There was nothing on the show that really felt like a chore to get through. Even the parts that I wasn't particularly interested in or that I didn't like didn't drag on, didn't make me want to throw something at the screen. So they're learning.
Yeah. Well, everybody, like this show, please take a moment to do that. Comment below if you got things to say. Interact with other listeners or viewers. And subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button and set the alerts up so when we go live, you are reminded of it. Check out my written TV reports at PWTorch.com or PWTorchVIP.com if you are a VIP member. Full details on VIP membership, including 35 plus years of fascinating archives covering the entire Monday Night War, all those dreadful years leading up to the Monday Night War, every single week of ECW's existence, including us making them giving them a dedicated section in the paper copy newsletter. Digital copies available to read with a VIP membership when we moved them from an independent group to a standalone brand. It was a big moment in ECW history for Pro Wrestling Torch to give them weekly attention. And we knew we thought they were going to become something, and they did. All kinds of fun. Rabbit holes, speaking of rabbit holes to go down, and just tons of current content. Podcasts with the commercials edited out. And VIP exclusive shows. We'll have the Money in the Bank Roundtable, Todd Martin, Rich Van, and I on Saturday night. We'll do the same thing, and we always have for AEW for 20 plus years. We've been doing post pay-per-view roundtables just for VIP members. They're all available on demand and on our feed. Very customizable feed, Apple Podcast friendly, CarPlay friendly. So check it out, pwtorch.com/govip. But if you are new to us and aren't ready to go VIP, just be sure you're subscribing to all of our podcasts. Search Wade Keller and search PWTorch. The PWTorch VIP free sample feed is going to include 6 Wade Keller hotlines back-to-back for over an hour and a half from 18 years ago this week. The first week of June in 2007. News update, Raw review, One Night Stand review. It's really cool. It is free for everybody. That is normally a VIP feature, our 18 years ago Podcast Vault podcast feed, compatible with podcast apps on Android and iOS and Apple Podcasts. It's very slick, no advanced settings, no passwords to enter, anything like that. But search PW Torch, subscribe to the Daily Cast, the PW Torch Daily Cast, but also that charcoal colored logo that says VIP on it. And you can get that hour and a half plus of Wade Keller hotlines, a fascinating look at behind the scenes news, TV reviews, and more to get a taste of what we do. And as always, we're looking for volunteers to help round out our coverage on our website, pwtorch.com. If you're a fan of Japan, fan of ROH, fan of WWE, et cetera, et cetera. Let me know if you want to be part of the team. Email me at kellerwade@gmail.com. That's the best way to email me if it's not just about the podcast itself. If you want to contribute, kellerwade@gmail.com. Chris's coverage of New Japan events is on pwtorch.com in the Japan section. Check that out. Chris, anything else you want to say or plug before we sign off here?
Yeah, big show coming up in Japan, Dominion on June 15th. All of their big singles titles are on the line. Takeshita's fighting on that as well. It looks like it's going to be a really stacked lineup and a really good spot if you've read the primers and you're curious to see what some of these people that you've read about are actually going to do in the ring. Looks like it's going to be a good show. Other than that, go VIP. We'll have a 7-star podcast coming out soon to do a recap of the Super Juniors. Once Kelly and I can find some time where neither one of us is hosting a burlesque festival or selling sports cards across the universe. And we'll probably have Radican Worldwide at some point as well. Sean is just as busy as Kelly and I are, so it's hard to get any two of the three of us in the same place at the same time, it seems.
Well, we'll make it happen, or you guys will make it happen. Thank you, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Yes, great fun. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get a 7-day free trial of our VIP audio shows, it's not the full customizable podcast feed with on-demand access to the archives, but it is every new show we put out during the week, commercial-free versions of the free shows, and all the VIP exclusive shows. You can get a 7-day free trial of that for Spotify or Patreon. Just search PWTorch VIP. And you can get details on full VIP membership at pwtorch.com/govip. That gives you all the options, all the different platforms we're on, and all the different benefits. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you Friday night after SmackDown. Check out Jason Paul and me on the flagship. Recorded that yesterday for a couple of hours. That's our Blue Logo show. Search Wade Keller. Subscribe to that if you haven't yet. And check out what Jason and I had to say about the big picture of everything going on in wrestling, including the R-Truth situation.